Okay, good evening. Welcome to
FamilyMath121a.
FamilyMath number 121a. So we're going to go on a really fun journey to find a four-dimensional sphere. And we're going to talk about its volume too.
Cool.
That's really cool. And this is all inspired by that video that I showed you yesterday that Numberphile did with the Professor Ed Frankel. And remember at the end of that video where he says, what if I told you there was this beautiful world out there and you didn't even have to go anywhere to find it?
Yeah.
It's right there at your fingertips.
Yeah.
So I hadn't planned on doing this until I saw that video, and I thought, you know what? Let's talk about four dimensions.
Cool.
Okay? So on Family Math 120, we did a long series of videos about circles and spheres, right?
Yeah.
And do you remember what we found? Like the area of a circle? You remember what that was?
Well, you had to chop it up into tiny. You had to like chop it up into tiny little pieces to make it a rectangle.
Yeah, that's what we did. Do you remember what the area was?
I think it was 2 pi.
You have a circle and it has a radius r. Do you remember what the area was?
I think it was 2 pi times r.
That is the circumference. That's how far it is around.
Oh.
Do you remember what the area was?
It's pi r squared.
Okay, so the area was pi r squared, and the circumference was 2 pi r. That's what you remember, 2 pi r. Okay? And do we see circles in our daily lives?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some? What's that?
It's a pi pan.
And what? Do you have any other circles?
Magnifying glass.
Magnifying glass? Okay.
There's this, which is sort of a sphere.
Oh yeah, and then we did talk about spheres next, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember what the volume of a sphere was?
I don't think so.
Do you remember?
No.
It was 4/3
4/3.
pi times the radius cubed.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Okay, and do you remember how we found that volume?
Well, we chopped it up into little discs.
Chopped it up into little discs and we added up the...
Like this one.
Exactly right.
Hmm.
Exactly right. We chopped it up into little discs just like this. And we stacked all those discs on top of each other.
And then for infinity.
Yeah, it took infinity of them and
Yeah,
eventually we
lots of
got
tiny
4/3
discs.
pi r cubed. Can you hold that please? Okay. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go on to a four-dimensional sphere, but we got to back up to go forward, okay?
All right.
Do you know what a circle is and how you define a circle? How would you describe a circle to somebody?
Well, I think it has infinite edges.
Oh, okay, it's like a polygon
Yeah.
that has infinite edges.
I would say a curve that loops back around to touch itself.
Okay, all right. Is there anything special about the curve? Because here's a curve that loops around and comes back and touches itself, and that's not a
The
circle.
curve goes in the same. The curve is the same The curve is the same distance from the center everywhere.
Ah, very good. The curve is the same distance from this point everywhere. It's always a radius away. And what about a sphere?
Sphere. Well, it's a 3D one of those.
Okay, there's a center of the sphere, and the edge of it is always the same distance away from that point.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
cool.
neat, right?
Yeah.
So this is, how many dimensions is a circle?
That's
Would you
Two
say?
dimensions.
That's two-dimensional.
that's
How many dimensions is a sphere that you're holding here?
3 dimensions.
3 dimensions. Okay, so what comes next?
4 dimensions.
All right, and that's what we're going to get to. What comes before this?
A one-dimensional surface.
Yeah, so before we talk about 4 dimensions, let's talk about 1 dimension. What's going to be a one-dimensional circle? Something that's one-dimensional, but it has the same property. It's all the points are the same distance away from a certain point.
Well,
Let's call it all the points that are the same distance away from that point.
a one-dimensional square is just a line.
Okay.
But like if you had a line here, all the points are the same distance away.
Yeah, can you think of what are all the points that are the same distance away from this point and are on this line?
Well, I think all of them are the same, the different distances away.
Ooh, interesting. Maybe they're all different distances away, so maybe it's hard to define.
Well, There's some points that are the same distance away, like here and here.
Ah, so is there something else that's the same distance away as this point?
Yeah, it's over there.
It's kind of like a mirror.
Yeah, it is kind of like a mirror, you're right. A one-dimensional circle is just 2 points on either the same distance away from the center. And we could talk about this distance as being the radius if we wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we filled it in, like when we fill in to calculate the area, we would have a line.
Cool.
Okay.
Then, what about a zero-dimensional one?
That's
Ooh.
just the point.
0 dimensions is just 1 point. So how many points do you think there are in a 0-dimensional circle?
Just one.
Probably this one.
Just one. Okay, but let's start with 1-dimensional.
All right.
And you remember when one way we found this area was we sliced it up?
Yeah.
What's this? We just learned the shape that we sliced it up into is a bunch of what?
We sliced it up. For the two-dimensional one, it's a bunch of rectangles.
Well, what are these?
These are lines. They're lines.
They're lines. And what did we just see? Those are 1-dimensional circles, right?
Cool.
So to make a 2-dimensional circle, we added up a bunch of 1-dimensional circles.
Hmm.
And what did we do to make a 3-dimensional circle?
We added up a bunch of two-dimensional ones.
We added up a bunch of 2-dimensional circles.
So what happens if you get four-dimensional?
Well, what do you think we're going to have to do to get a
Maybe
4-dimensional
add up a
circle?
bunch of these.
Add up a bunch
But
of
how are
spheres.
we gonna do that?
How are we going to do that? Yeah, you know what? We're going to do that tomorrow.
Okay.
But today we learned what a 1-dimensional circle was.
Yeah.
And then we remembered a little bit, or saw, that we added up a bunch of 1-dimensional circles to make a 2-dimensional circle.
Cool.
And then we added a bunch of 2-dimensional circles on top of each other
To make a three-dimensional.
to make a 3-dimensional circle, which we call
It's a sphere.
a sphere. Somehow or other, we're going to add a bunch of 3-dimensional circles or spheres together
A four-dimensional.
to make a 4-dimensional one. And that's going to be really neat. So we'll start talking about that a little more tomorrow night, okay?
Alright.
Yeah.
All right. High five, guys. Good job.